Well, good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. I have 2 degrees in English, and I taught literature and composition to high school students for 35 years. You can only imagine how many papers I have written and how many analytical and persuasive essays I have corrected. I also taught creative writing, helping students find their own voice in writing stories and poems. I know what makes writing clear, coherent, and beautiful. I know the rhetorical strategies used to persuade and to inspire, and how the exact choice of words establishes tone and conveys meaning. We all come to an understanding of Unitarian Universalists from our own life experiences, and we all read the proposed Article 2 through a different lens. I look at the proposal not only through the lens of an English teacher, but as someone who has a deep love for Unitarian Universalism. I would like to show you how the proposal shapes a new vision for our faith. I will walk you through the current Article 2 and the proposed Article 2, so you can decide for yourself if the words resonate with you and whether the new article shapes a vision you can embrace. I also want to point out all that will be lost from the current Article 2. So many people claim there is little difference between the current one and the proposal. I will show you all the changes to that content. And many people think that those of us who focus on the language are just wordsmithing. I will show you how diction and word choices are vitally important. I will point out words that have been added and words that have been deleted, words that for decades have been defining Unitarian Universalism. For those of you on Zoom, you do not have in your possession right now the proposal nor the principles, but you can find the revision on the USH website, as well as going to the UUA website, because a version of this with all of the lines will be available to you to look through. I'm going to identify lines as we go through this document for everyone here. And those of you on Zoom, perhaps you could just make a note of that, or know that when you come to look at the proposal, you'll have already heard how we've analyzed it. So if you would all turn to your I'm going to ask people to find the Article 2. So at this point, I'm going to guide you through the major changes. And I think the major changes are on the screen. There are 4 major changes I want to highlight. And those are going to be supported, these changes are going to be supported throughout the document as we go through the words. So the first, for those of you who can't read it from far away, and also for our remote audience, the first is a change in the role and the purposes of the UUA from serving congregations to actively participating in congregational life. The second changes a faith based on a belief in certain principles to a faith based on a shared list of values with covenants, promising to activate the values. The third change is that we have affirmed and supported a very broad 6th principle: the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. The new goal is more specific. It is, and I quote, to heal historic injustices, to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression, to repair harm and damaged relationships, and to protect all beings from exploitation. The fourth is a change from affirming the freedom of the individual search for truth and meaning to searching for truth and meaning as a collective we. So let's go through each change, starting with the role of the UUA. The current description of the purposes of the UUA should be appearing on the screen, and it's only 2 sentences long. The Unitarian Universalist Association shall devote its resources to and exercise its corporate powers for religious, educational, and humanitarian purposes. The primary purpose of the association is to serve the needs of its member congregations, organize new congregations, extend and strengthen UU institutions, and implement UU principles. So now, would you look at the first lines of the proposal? Turn to the proposed document. And you might even like to underline or make some notes in the margins as we analyze the text, as we go through specific words. You might think of this time together as examining the fine print, which we often gloss over, but later discover it's the most important part of the document. Let's look at lines 3 to 12. In the first sentence in line 3, the Commission replaces the word shall with the word will. Why make this small change? Well, the word will expresses a desire. The word shall expresses obligation. This change removes our current understanding that the UUA is obligated to serve the needs of the member congregations. The next 10 lines describe a new role for the UUA. Look at line 5. It says to assist congregations in their vital ministries. The mission changes the words from to serve congregations. In line 9, the Commission changes the words to organize new congregations to support and encourage the creation of new UU communities. Using words to suggest that the UUA will support other people, whoever they may be, to organize and create UU communities rather than UU congregations. Look at line 10. In one of the most significant word changes to Unitarian Universalism, the Commission removes the foundational beliefs of living by principles, which are currently at the heart of the UUism. They change it to advancing our UU values in the world. So in just these 3 lines, the Commission has changed the purpose of the UUA, it has changed the direction of the UUA, it's changed the foundational beliefs from principles to 6 values with love at the center. In lines 6, 7, and 8, the UUA will also work with congregations rather than serve congregations. In line 6, the UUA will support and train leaders, both lay and professional. In line 7, the UUA will help to foster lifelong faith formation and spiritual development. But it is in line 8 that the Commission writes the most expansive goal. Through implementing the values and covenants, the UUA and congregations will heal historic injustices. The specific nature of these injustices are described within the values section. So lines 1 through 10 support the first three major changes we identified on the slide: changing the role of the UUA, replacing principles with values, reducing the goal of justice for all to healing historic injustices. Before we read lines 11 and 12, would you look at your bookmark and find the second section of the bookmark? There are 6 sections of sources. Look at this sources side. The living tradition we share draws from many sources. Number 2, the second area, the way we are to address injustices is through the transforming power of love. That last line in the second paragraph, through the transforming power of love. Now let's go back to the proposal and look at line 11 and 12, especially the line number 12, which is, so what you see is that lines 11 and 12 read, the UUA will actively engage its members in the transformation of the world through liberating love. The Commission adds the word liberating to qualify the nature of love. And what is that qualification? How are they narrowing our understanding of love? The word liberating has many connotations, but the most understood is to free oneself or others from restrictions that limit freedom. By describing love as liberating, the implication is that the UUA is shaping an identity as an agent to free those who have experienced historic injustices. And including the word actively at the very beginning, the actively engage suggests that the UUA will engage members in this transformation, will have us act out these expectations. If you read that sentence, you can put it in the category of a call to action. That's what that sentence, if you distill the meaning behind it, this is a call to action. And as you will see, many of the statements throughout the document assert a call to action in the same way as political and social justice organizations do. And ultimately, these added words lead to shaping a social justice identity for the UUA. And this identity is framed as a collective effort and clarifies the fourth change that we saw on the slides, which is replacing the principle, the idea of the freedom, individual freedom of belief, to a collective group that supports and acts on a set of values. So let's look at how the words in section C 2.2 of the proposed document shape this collective identity. The Commission removes the 7 principles and adds 6 values with love at the center in this rather diminished logo of the flower. But if you look at lines 15 and 16, they say that the values are derived from our heritage of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building upon the foundations of love. I encourage you to underline these words: freedom, reason, hope, and courage, and then note how often they appear or do not appear in the section describing the values. How can we find those words of hope and freedom and reason in the rest of it, in the rest of the document? Now, Let's look at lines 17, 18, and 19. The words call UUs to action. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. The sentence includes two important directives: the word work and the word accountable. The word accountable is a really interesting word choice to describe our relationship to one another. Using the word accountable instead of words like responsible or caring for adds a level of oversight that can be counted and documented. The connotations of the word accountable are almost always negative. We hold people accountable for their misdeeds, not their positive actions. We associate this word with bad behavior and hear it being used repeatedly now in the public conversations about political figures or those who have broken the law. Including this word in the bylaws adds the element of judgment to the way we will relate to each other and how we will work to implement the values. Even if it is unclear who will judge and how the judgment will unfold, just choosing the word accountable puts UUs on notice. It establishes a tone that appears nowhere in our current Article 2, one that suggests the possibility of criticism or rejection. For many UUs, the deletion of the 7 principles was unexpected and has become this major concern in this continuing conversation. What exactly is the difference between statements of principle and a list of values? A principle is a fundamental truth that serves as a foundation for a system of belief. It also serves as a proposition for a chain of reasoning. Principles are objective, permanent, and unchanging. Principles guide us to live consistent and moral lives. Perhaps the most famous example in American history is the opening sentence of the Declaration of Independence that has not changed in 248 years. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Values, on the other hand, are concepts that an individual or a group decides are important and worthy of high regard. Values are internal and therefore subjective and can change over time. A person can say, I value success, but over time, achieving success can become much less important. Let's now look at the section of the values. You open your page or the document, the 6 values are listed. First, they appeared in that flower logo, but now they appear as a list, and each value is highlighted or darkened. The 6 values were selected by the Commission from the many, many possible words or values that could be associated with love. But since they emerge from the idea of liberating love, 3 of the values are conditions, not emotions or attitudes. They are conditions. 3 of the words, interdependence, equity, and pluralism, reflect the role the goal, really, of removing restrictions and injustices and establishing certain conditions in our congregations and in the world. The list of values also marks a significant change from supporting and affirming the individual's freedom of belief to a focus on the group. As you read through all of these values and covenants, you can circle the pronoun we 25 times. In contrast, the word individual appears only once at the very end of the document and is a holdover from the current Article 2. Although the Commission claims that the new values have been distilled from and are embedded in the 7 principles, when you look closely, many of them take on a different meaning, and many are vague and ambiguous. So let's look at lines 22 to 44. The value is first stated and then is followed by a definition or a declaration. Then the definition is followed by a sentence that exacts a covenant or promise to act and implement that value. So we move from here's a definition, here's what it's about, and here's what you promise to do to make sure that value is activated or it comes into fruition. So let's look at them. The first value is interdependence. And although the definition begins with we honor the independent web of all existence, the promise we make is to protect the earth and all beings from exploitation. And then it goes on to talk about human relationships. Sort of there's the earth, there's the, how am I explaining this? The interdependent web, then there is the earth, and then freeing all people from exploitation. And it's there where the statement description focuses on human relationships and we promise to repair the harm and damage we have done to other human beings. And those of you who have not been following the revision process carefully will be surprised to learn that at General Assembly in June, this sentence was voted out of the document. A majority of delegates voted for amendment number 52 to remove the sentence, "We will work to repair harm and damage relationships." GA voted to remove that sentence. But you see it's back in this document. The Commission reinserted the sentence in the final draft. The Commission and the UUA interpret the bylaws to mean they can continue to revise the proposal after General Assembly. They do not have to abide by the votes taken. So the question is, why did they ignore the vote and reinsert the sentence? And the conclusion can be that this sentence is the action that is necessary for people to promise to heal injustices. There's no other sentence that says this is what you have to do, even though it's very vague how to do it. Are you following me? So can you see how this is a really tricky document to parse? So the next one, pluralism. Let's see how that one unfolds. The definition is that we celebrate that we are all sacred beings and we recognize our diversity. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. We promise to learn from one another and search together for truth and meaning. Once again, the search is framed as a collective effort, not an individual one. And how that fits under pluralism, it is bringing everybody together, to be a plural noun. The next value justice. And here, the definition of justice is creating a multicultural community. The actions that follow are twofold. One, we promise to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. And second, we promise to support the use of inclusive democratic processes. Our principles just say democratic processes. So by adding the word inclusive to describe the process, the democratic process, the language and that's adding it to the fifth principle, so they're embedding the fifth principle in here, but they add inclusive democracy. So what does that mean? It refers to the efforts to address power structures that have kept people from participating in the democratic process, to address power structures. And it's curious that the commission disregarded the democratic vote that passed Amendment number 52 at GA. But nowhere in the document is the change from the individual to a group identity more apparent than in the fourth value of transformation. It reads, "We adapt to a changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically." The addition of the word collectively suggests once together that we work together for truth and meaning. And it's no longer defined as we who create building your own theology. It's no longer an option. It's building a theology together. And the word collectively continues to support the idea that we are becoming a particular identity group. The next value is generosity. It reads, "We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope." And generosity is then defined as promising to share our faith, presence, and resources. Of all the values or emotions that can derive from love, such as caring, compassion, kindness, respect, the commission chose generosity. And notice that it is the only value that expresses a human emotion. But all the others are conditions. As the next one, equity. The sixth value misinterprets the first principle so awkwardly that it's really hard to parse the meaning. The end of the sentence is, "Every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness." So on the face of it, that sounds okay, but what does that really mean? Our first principle affirms the belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It's a belief that is rooted in the historic ideal of trust in the individual, the belief that each of us is inherently good and should be held in high respect. The commission had to reframe this ideal to work as a declaration of how to act or how to create a condition of equality. So it now seems to mean that every person has the right to be treated fairly by others, to be treated with dignity. And so it's again framed in this action of how do we act, rather than a belief that individually we are inherently good, which is part of the long tradition of Unitarian and Universalism. The idea that the person is inherently worthy is lost when it's framed as an action of how you treat other people. You follow that? That's a challenging one to correct, as if I were correcting a paper and saying maybe you could redo it so that it's not in a verb form, and anyway. So let's now look at the back of the bookmark again to read the sources, the living traditions from which Unitarian Universalism is derived. The word source means a point of origin. Unitarian Universalism derives beliefs, principles, values from a wide range of specific philosophies, traditions, and religions, as well as direct experience. And they are listed, the origins are listed under its sources. Now let's look at section 2.3 in your document. The Commission chose to eliminate these original sources. They have written a vague description that Unitarianism draws wisdom from such words as inspirations and understandings. They've categorized, and instead of sources, these are inspirations. The descriptions are so broad that it's impossible to know what sources can guide us to find meaning and wisdom, or where to look for them. It's all that we respect histories and contexts and cultures. What are they referring to? And we look to religious ancestries. Again, where is that to be found if you were to search for it? As Judy noted, the word religion never appears in this document. It does only twice, as an adjective in that religious ancestries. It also appears in line 4 in the very beginning for religious purposes. Why is the word religion missing from this document? The Commission has assured us that they chose every word carefully, so this can't be an oversight. Does this document reflect that Unitarian Universalism is a religion, one of many religious denominations? Or do the words in this document create a framework for an identity group and a social justice organization? So 4 words added to the current section on inclusion may partially answer that question for us. If lines on, has the next slide appeared? Not yet. Well, there it is. All right. So it's perhaps hard to read from a distance, but on the screen is the current statement of inclusion. In the middle of the paragraph, it reads, "We truly welcome all persons. And although you are far away, there is a very tiny period after persons." Now let's look at the proposal, line 55. The proposal now reads, "We welcome all persons who share our values," period. These 4 words identify who is welcome: those persons who share the values of the group. Grammatically, you can add the word only to replace all, and it has the very same meaning. We welcome all persons who share the values of the group, and we welcome only those people who share the group, who share those values. Those 2 words are reversible almost all the time. The word only then implies a meaning that we welcome people who are like us. Next, in the section on freedom of belief, we see a shift in the language from the importance of the individual to the primacy of the group. On the screen, has the current Article 2 for freedom of belief come up yet? Because I've kind of diverted from the script that they're reading. It's there. All right. So this is coming to the end. And if you look at this on the screen, the current Article 2 recognizes, affirms, and guarantees the freedom of belief in one clear, unambiguous sentence. It reads, "Nothing herein shall be deemed to infringe upon the individual freedom of belief." If you go back to section C25 in the proposal, the subject of the opening sentence is congregational freedom. The words are changed to give freedom to congregations, not to the individual. And although the individual's right of conscience remains, individual right of conscience is different from individual freedom. They're not the same. Freedom belongs now in the new proposal to the congregation or the group. Individual freedom of belief has been at the very heart of Unitarian Universalism for centuries. Authority is invested in the individual, not in a hierarchy, as Judy described. The fact that individual freedom appears nowhere in Article 2 speaks volumes to the shift in beliefs as the UUA crafts a new identity. Rather than expanding our vision, expanding our world, this new version has narrowed the UU faith to one theme and one direction, and that's what the language says. In closing, I want to tell you all that Unitarian Universalism has inspired me for 53 years to live a hopeful, purposeful, and meaningful life. The church has supported me as I explore my own path to the spiritual and as I engage in social justice work that I choose. I am grateful to be part of a religious community with others who are doing the same. The current Article 2 supports individual spiritual growth. It encourages participation in many different social causes, and it embraces everyone. The words in the current Article 2 reflect the larger worldviews that I have always aspired to, all my life. So, I hope that taking a really close look at the fine print in both articles, you now have a clearer understanding of the significance of the changes, of the significance of the words, of what they really mean. And then you can decide whether these words speak to you, and this is the meaning you want to have be guiding you in the years to come. So thank you.